When you're at peace, you can be fully present and it allows you to be in the moment. Because when you're in the moment, it's really hard to be anxious because you're not worrying about the outcome, you're not worrying about the future. You're being fully present and you're being there in that moment. There was this clip that showed up on my Instagram a couple of days ago from Kung Fu Panda, the wise old turtle. He's like, why are you worrying about tomorrow? Or worry about yesterday? They've already been. The only thing that we know for sure is what's happening right now. And you're at peace, you can be fully present and it allows you to be in the moment. Because when you're in the moment, it's really hard to be anxious because you're not worrying about the outcome, you're not worrying about the future. You're being fully present and you're being there in that moment. There was this clip that showed up on my Instagram a couple of days ago from Kung Fu Panda, the wise old turtle. He's like, why are you worrying about tomorrow? Or worry about yesterday? They've already been. The only thing that we know for sure is what's happening right now. And
Hi, I'm Glennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. So many of us, as we begin this wonderful journey we call midlife, are beginning to see some things that maybe we haven't experienced before. One of them might be some anxiety that you're feeling or trepidation. Another might be feeling this inner knowing that seems to be enhanced. You get this voice that say, don't do this, don't do that. You're wondering, where is that coming from? Well, I can tell you, it's all a part of the midlife experience. And as I say all the time, ladies, midlife, menopause, all these things doesn't happen to you. It happens for you because it's such an opportunity to really grow, peel back the layers, and find out about all your superpowers. Yes, I said it's superpowers that you have that become even more enhanced as you begin to embrace your aging process. That's why I'm so excited to have with us someone who's an expert on this. Catherine Crestani is a spiritual leadership coach and an intuitive healer who empowers women and mothers to turn exhaustion and self-doubt into clarity, energy, and purpose. After walking away from a six-figure job, I know about that, Catherine, I did the same thing twice to heal from burnout, anxiety, and adrenal fatigue. Catherine rebuilt her life from the inside out, discovering that true success begins with alignment and not overachievement. And Catherine, you are speaking my language. Welcome to the Vibe Living Podcast. It's so great to have you here today.
hi, Linus. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because
Yeah.
it's my life.
Well, it's my life too. We have similar stories. I walked away from a six-figure company or six-figure salary from a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, Fortune 50 company almost 20 years ago. And I left under the auspices of going on a sabbatical to go back to school because it was a healthcare environment. And I was on the administrative side. And I was going to go back to school, get another MBA or something like that. But I had been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and exhaustion. And I was 51 at the time. I was 51. And so the interesting part about it was there was never any mention about the fact that some of this stuff that I was feeling was as a result of hormonal imbalances or maybe chemical imbalances or maybe imbalances in terms of the vitamins and other kinds of things, minerals that keep you going. None of that was mentioned. It was all about trying to fix the symptom. So I was put on medication and all the kind of stuff. And somewhere in the back of my mind, the beginning of my intuition, because I was in my 50s, something said, you know what, this isn't right. And I began doing research, and that's when I found out about the whole mind, body, spirit movement, left corporate America, and 18 years later, here I am. That's why I'm so excited to talk with you about your experience. What was your story, and how have you come to do what you do now in terms of working with women?
Yeah, it was a bit of an evolution. My background's in allied health, so I was a speech language pathologist and I built two companies. So one with the business partner that ended, I call that my nasty divorce because I had a personal divorce and then I had a business divorce. And I chose myself and my husband and I was pregnant. I was chose my baby at that time. I didn't want to put up with that stress anymore and the anxiety, and when you were touching on anxiety, it comes on so many different levels. And at the end of that partnership, my anxiety triggers was actually any message I got from her from my phone because it was getting that bad. And I just didn't want to, like, I had my husband screening the messages before I read them, and to the point I actually blocked her on my personal phone and she had to contact me through my work phone because it was getting that bad. And whilst I was still was in that partnership, I think my gut intuition, it just had this feeling like I had to do my own thing and keep my own thing separate. And I was so grateful I did that because whilst I was in the partnership, I was still having my own things and still building up my own business by myself. And I built up this amazing company. So the partnership was a seven-figure business, which I was more than happy to walk away from. But when you build up a company from scratch yourself, like that is your little baby. And so I built it up and it was really, we got through like lockdowns, it was thriving in the lockdowns because we were allied health. We found ways to still make it work for us. It was all these things. And my husband said to me, you're not happy, you need to sell the company. And I was like, no, 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 I'm going to make it so that I can step back and, just be managing it and, not be working in it, da, 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 da. And then I was just working 24 hours a day. That's what I say. Like I'd go to bed and I'd wake up and have 100 things on my to-do list. I was having panic attacks. I was having anxiety all the time where I felt like I couldn't breathe. And, it was truly going through a spiritual awakening or reawakening at the same time that it made me start to step back and see what I truly valued in my life. And I value my family and my time being a mom and being a wife and being with my family. And I wasn't getting that because even the days when I wasn't at the office, I was still having to put out so many fires and ridiculous fires, like phone calls on our weekends away of like, hey, I can't find batteries for the mouse. And it's like, really? Like just I never take time off and I'm away for 3 days and you somehow manage to call me because you can't find batteries for the mouse, like things like that. And it was just putting that in perspective. But then when the universe and spirit has a way to make you realize that that's not meant to be for you, that was my kind of wake up call to step out of running a company. So, in the period of a week, I had 3 staff resign. So, this is me trying to step back and realizing that, oh my goodness, like I was broken because my health wasn't okay. Like I was seeing a naturopath every week, like you were saying with supplements and everything to stay okay. I was going every 1 to 2 weeks and coming out with a box of supplements to keep me going because my nervous system was so fried. That was the only way I could keep functioning, and not going to the full burnout spiral where I just collapsed. So when I had 3 staff quit in a week, I was in a ball on the floor. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was so hard. I was so upset and angry and frustrated because I knew my body couldn't keep going at the pace it was going. And at the same time, spiritually, I'm like, you want me to do this other work, and yet you're making my company fall apart. And so I eventually got off the floor, like my husband and my son and my my guides were like, you can get up, you can get up. And then a month later, in the space of a week, another 3 resigned. So it was like seriously, and I was angry. This time I was incredibly angry and went out to this rock where I meditate and I was yelling at the universe. I'm like, what is this? This is so terrible. And I accidentally took it out on one of my staff that and I actually went and apologized to her. And I feel this is such an important lesson about owning who you are and taking accountability for your actions because she had so much respect for me for doing that. And she goes, not everyone would come and do that. I said, no, I realized I took my anger out on you and you didn't deserve it. I know you're choosing to go to a path that you need to go to, and I respect that. But at the same time, I said it was just timing and you got the brunt of my anger, and I apologize for that. And then a month later, another 3 resigned in a week. And by this point, I hadn't filled the original positions. And I just went, you know what? I am not meant to have these people in my life, and I am not meant to be running this business anymore. I'm done. I need to sell this company. And my husband, who had said, from January that year, I told you. I was like, I know, but you don't understand when you build something from scratch, you have to be ready to let it go. You have to be energetically, emotionally, physically, like ready to let that baby walk and do what it needs to do. And then when I sold the company, I thought, great, we'll be financially okay. And, I got a good chunk of money. We paid off a chunk of debt, da, 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 da. And then subconsciously, I didn't believe I was worthy of that money because technically I didn't work hard to have that come into my bank account, even though I did work hard. So then I subconsciously pushed that all away. And then we had to go back to living paycheck to paycheck. And it was actually really stressful. And it made me learn how to ask for what I wanted because I was still working for the company that I sold like a little bit, but I had so much more freedom, which I loved. And I was staying in that job for the income. And then it got to this point where I started losing feeling in my body because I was staying in this job and I kept saying to my husband, I can't keep doing this. I really want to stay at home and be a mum and then work on, my coaching and my intuitive healing. This is what I want to do. I want to be a mum because I had to go back to work really early and my husband got to become a stay-at-home dad. I never got to experience the beautiful toddler years in full. I didn't get to see all those fun things. I missed doing the school run, like all those things. And it seems so simple and sometimes it's really annoying, but at the same time, it was what my heart was craving. And so I was staying in this job for the income. And I just got to this point and we were like, okay, well, let's sell our house and then we won't need as much income, start building a life that aligns with us so we can have the freedom that we want. And once we started that process and I delayed my timeline because instead of following my intuition and putting in my resignation with the date that I had in my head and trusting that, I put a condition of when the house sells, I'll quit my job. So I was holding on and holding on to this old identity and holding on to who I was. And when I did that, I started to lose feeling. So I lost feeling in the left side of my pinky and it went up my arm to the point I lost feeling in half my face. Now yes, I went to so many different practitioners. I have a beautiful array and they would all fix it. And then a couple of days later, it would come back. And then I had these beautiful couple that are healers, and they said to me, Catherine, until you get to the source of what is causing this,
Not all those beautiful people were dealing with the symptoms, but not the cause.
exactly. Exactly. But I knew in my heart I was numbing myself to stay in the job. And I had to have this big argument with my husband. And like, because it was a massive role shift. He'd been at home for 6 years with my son. I was saying, you have to go back to work. I can't keep working. Like, I can't keep doing this, and he's like, I'll never earn what you can earn. I said, I don't care. We just need something. We've got investments. We've got savings. This is the point. And we're selling the house, all those sorts of things. So after a tumultuous month, I finally left that position and then I just stepped into my power really and I had more clients coming in, I had more opportunities coming in and we haven't been short of money, which is really interesting. Weirdly, the first week that I wasn't working and it was outside the paycheck period, so I wasn't getting paid anymore, our savings was the highest it ever been. And we're like, this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, this is where our natural state is abundance. And, even though I still have some of these money stories come up, it's nowhere near as bad. I'm not as triggered. If you're someone that, if you see someone quotes you a price for something, you're like, oh my God, that's so expensive. How could you charge that? And you don't see the value in it, but you're triggered by the price, you need to work on your money story. But if you can go, actually, that's not for me. Thank you, but I can't see that value. Different energy, different perspective. And this is where
Let's
you can
talk
shift.
about that a little bit because I think at
Yeah.
midlife there's a big deal around money because you're looking at
Mm,
possible retirement. Can you retire? And these days that all seems tenuous because of what's going on with our economy, not just the economy here in the States, but the economy
everywhere.
worldwide. So when you talk about money story, what do you mean? And also, how can one change their money story?
Lots of deep work, Linus. But we have been so conditioned through culture and society, like, you have to work hard for your money, or money doesn't grow on trees. Well, in America, you have paper money, right? So it literally does grow on trees, right? Or what is money is rich people are evil or money is evil. So we have all these subconscious beliefs, that so mine was you have to work hard for your money. And I was like, why do I have to do that? Why can't I get money, come in and invest it really well, and then the money goes and does the work for me? And why can't I step out of those things? And I feel that we've been taught so to be in like this, lack of a better word, like a slave model where we're constantly feeling we have to work these 9 to 5s and then earn our time off rather than integrate it into our life. And, we've been so conditioned that we have to pay taxes and we have to do all these things rather than learning, all right, if I take this money and I invest it, then I'm constantly going to have income coming in, even if I'm not working, or if I instead of buying that coffee this week, I'm going to put that $5 to gold and silver or crypto or put that in an account and let it grow, whatever way you want to do it. We've never been taught that. So we have this thing when we get to midlife that we go, I don't want to keep working this job like this,
Yeah.
working this way for the rest of my life, but we don't know how to get out of it. And then this is where the money wounds come up. So this is where it's like, oh no, I can't afford that. And instead of thinking that way, you might change your perception and go, actually, that's not a financial priority for me right now. And that feels a lot nicer than
Yeah, you
saying
begin to reframe. And, our words are so powerful. I can
100%.
Yeah, I can remember when I was in, administration, I was in human resources. And years and years ago, I took this certification course to support managers when it came to working with their people. And there was one part of the certification course that talked about guarding your words and actions. And I've never forgot the key learnings about that in terms of how powerful your words are and the
Yes.
energy they put out there. That's so important. And, a lot of people, they find it somewhat esoteric to say, well, you can build a life of your dreams by following your intuition. But so, how do you do that? How do you build a life following your intuition? Especially since intuition is something that is to many people almost esoteric. You can't see it. So, is it real?
Yeah. And this is where you have to know yourself really well. And so, you have your gut instinct. So a lot of people try and dismiss that too. Like I built businesses on my gut instincts and people were trying to say, oh, you can't, they're just feelings. It's like, well, exactly. They're feelings and they're there for you to pay attention because when we trust our gut is our like safe place, right? And even there's been so much research done, which is so interesting. If anyone's curious, go to the Heart Math Institute. But they've done this research to see where decision making receptors are in the body. And it turns out that our heart contains the most decision making receptors, followed by the gut, and the brain is last. So we've been taught in society to check in logically before we check in with our gut and then our heart. We're doing it backwards. We're meant to check in with our heart first, which is where our intuitive whispers come in. This is where like, I believe our soul speaks from, and then we check in with our gut. Okay, is this safe? And if there's a fear, is it a fear because I don't know what's going to happen? Or is it a fear because there's a genuine safety concern? And then we check in with our brain and do the logic. But so often we get stuck in our head and we get stuck in those stories, and then we forget to listen to what our heart says. And the biggest thing I've learned with following my intuition is that sometimes you have to trust and back yourself immensely because other people will be telling you that you're wrong or you don't know what you're talking about, or you have to wait because sometimes you don't get the immediate feedback. Like you said, you can't see it. You don't get the immediate feedback. You're like, I just know in my heart, this is what I need to do. And the more that you can honor that and trust it, the more that things will start to align. And then you'll just see weird things kind of click in and flow. And you're like, huh. But sometimes it takes a little while and really trusting and surrendering. This is my big lesson, trusting and surrendering to the divine timing of things. Because my guides, like when I work spiritually, I get, oh, when's that going to happen? Soon. I'm like, soon? What's
And
soon? Is that,
yeah, you
yeah,
have to be okay with that because when you start assigning assigned time to it, it's finite. And
exactly.
many times,
Exactly.
the infinite wisdom that comes from your guides, your intuition, your Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, is not finite. It's very, very broad, and that's where the trusting comes in. And I know you have something called a peace, power, and purpose framework that you use with your clients to help release what drains them. How do you go about doing that? And you also are very clear about the need to set boundaries. How does all of that work?
Well, For me, my meaning of success is peace and finding your peace, because if you can find that inner peace within yourself, you can have chaos happening around you and the
Mm,
world can be falling down, but you can still come back to yourself and know you're okay because you're standing in your truth. And I say your truth because everyone has their own truth. And I find this is really important and really need to point that out because your truth is not the same as the next person. My truthfulness isn't the same as yours because we have different stories that have made us who we are. We have different gifts. We have different things that have happened in our life. So what might be truth for me is not necessarily truth for you, but somewhere because we're connected, there's some interloping of those values and that truth, right? So when you come back to that peace and you can find that peace in yourself, and a lot of the time, especially as mums, it is establishing those boundaries, like you said, and learning how to say no. And this is the first thing I teach my clients is like, where are you saying yes instead of no? And it's funny because we're recording this, we're coming up to this crazy holiday season, and I'm actually like sharing this with people. It's like, you need to create boundaries around the holidays. For us, it was like, we don't want all these gifts that you're buying us that we're just going to throw or donate. Like, actually, why don't instead we do handmade gifts? Or why not, you instead of, because with our child, he was the first grandchild. So we said, instead of buying him all these toys that he's not going to play with, why not buy him one or two things that he really wants? And then whatever money you were going to spend, put it in a bank account,
mm,
like, so things like that. You know, and also going in with the intent, like my family and family get-togethers, there's always some sort of drama. I don't
mm.
know if you're the same, right? There's always has to be some sort of drama. And I don't know why. It's just always happens. And so last Christmas, I went in and we had this massive thing on Boxing Day. And I went in with the intent, I'm like, no, I actually really enjoy getting together with my family. I haven't seen them for ages. We've got because it's summer here in Australia. So it's like, we're at my parents' place. We had a pool. We're going to have fun. Like my son can play with his cousins and my cousin's kids and, all those sorts of things. And I was like waiting for it. I was waiting for the drama. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like I consciously made a plan. I'm like, no, I'm going to stay out of it. And sure enough, this drama situation arose and I physically left the room. I just left and they tried to pull me back in. They were like, "Oh, no, no, like what do you think?" I'm like, "No. I don't want to be involved. I'm going to go find the kids and play with the kids because I don't want this drama." You know? And that's what I ended up doing and I was able to preserve my peace and also preserve the intent that I had for that day. And when you start to step back and realize and know yourself like, okay, I'm going to look at this from a different perspective and I don't have to be sucked into this. And, I don't drink alcohol anymore. That's my choice. But at the same time, I used to have to go to these family functions and drink alcohol to numb myself to put up with the drama. Whereas I'm like, why am I sitting in this? Even, eat more food, eat more food. So I just took my food and ate outside. It's
Right,
just,
exactly. What you did, it sounds like what you did is that you did the things that you need to do to maintain your peace because peace
100%.
is very valuable. But sometimes women have problems not even getting to that peace, but just the idea of surrendering and allowing themselves to feel a lack of control. I think one of the things that's anxiety causing from an antidotal aspect is trying to control the outcome, be invested in controlling the outcome. I know for me, that was one of the things that was causing my anxiety. That was completely anecdotal based upon what happened to my mother. She was hit by a fire truck on her way to work, and she was only 56. And at the time, I had just had my third child, and she was like 5 or 6 weeks old. And I was visiting my grandfather at the family home. My dad was at work, and my mom was on her way to work. How I found out was very, very traumatic. And from that moment on, I unconsciously decided that I was never going to be surprised again, that I was going to control the outcome. So fast forward 20 years later, which is when I left corporate America, it was so out of control, trying to control the outcome. And my hormones were out of control because I was going through menopause. And so my, cortisol levels were up, my
Mm.
estrogen levels were down, and that feeling of that uncertainty was there. So it was like a double whammy. And I finally hit the wall and, had to take some time off. And when it came time to come back, I realized I didn't want to go back to that trigger situation of work. And because I hadn't healed myself, but I was on the road. So I guess you could say I finally set the boundary of not going to return to work instead and kind of find myself. And, I ended up building this business. But the first step was learning how to set the boundaries. And also, something else that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting. You mentioned that one of the issues around manifestation, around being able to receive, is feeling worthy. And I know
Mm.
I had that issue as well, feeling worthy to have the money that you accumulated and not run through it because deep down inside you're not feeling worthy. What do you tell your clients about that? How do you help them get on the road to recovery from that?
So this is the beautiful thing about being an intuitive healer as well, is that I can help them see where the blocks are, and really unpack. And sometimes it's as simple as learning to love yourself, because often there'll be something that happened, like you said, with the event with how your mother, you found out traumatically that she had been hit by a fire engine and all the things that came with that. But finding the root cause of where that self-worth comes from. It might be as simple as you were like 2 years old and you just really wanted someone to give you a hug and tell you, I love you. So it's really unpacking where that story started, that I am not enough. Or I am not worthy of receiving this, or usually it's I'm not worthy of receiving love. Because even if it's a money issue, often it comes down to how we feel about ourselves. And when we really unpack that and get to the deep root cause of that, that is where we can start to see those shifts. So for me, it was definitely self-worth. And when I started to believe in myself again, I suddenly had all these clients signing up to my program that I hadn't, no one was signing up to. I had, this money appearing from random places in the bank, like my parents gave me some money, which I wasn't expecting. Like all these sort of things just kind of aligned. But it was doing that inner work and that shift that allowed that to come forward. And exactly like you said, it comes down to your worth. And this is where your peace can come from too. Like if you're constantly feeling you need to people please and show to everyone like, oh, but I can do that and I can do that, and then want to control the outcome, like you said, it's exhausting. It
It's
drains your
exhausting.
energy.
And I was
Yeah.
trying, I have four daughters and they're all very close in age. And so I was trying to control what they were doing. I was trying to control what my husband was doing. I was trying to control what my employer was doing. I was trying to
God, even I'm exhausted
father.
for you.
I was trying to do all that stuff. And I had a brand new baby. And as you know, having babies, your hormones are all over the place anyway. They never really had come into balance completely because I had three children very close together. So, it was all these things that eventually accumulate to a perfect storm 20 years later. 20 years later, here I am realizing that something's not right. The question is, though, when I think most women can kind of feel when something's not right, but it takes the courage to recognize that something's not right. What words of encouragement can you give our listeners when it comes to helping them get to that point?
I feel it's find someone that will listen to you and
Mm,
support you through that, because we're not meant to do this alone. And I feel that sometimes we can be really stubborn and think, oh, we'll find our solutions and we'll use Chat GPT to get the answers, and we'll just try and do all the free stuff and everything like that. But the biggest thing I noticed is when I chose to invest in myself and get myself a coach, that is when I had the biggest shifts. Not because he did anything different, but he helped reflect to me what I couldn't see. And the most powerful thing he said to me was, a mirror can't see herself. Because my frustration was, I'm like, I can help all these people build their businesses and create the lives they want and shift them out of all these things, but why can't I do that for myself? And he said, because you can't see yourself, you're too close to it. And this is where having that support and finding someone that doesn't make you feel crazy, sometimes doctors will just put a band-aid on the solution, or, you
oh,
can be like, I'm not feeling right. You go to a psychologist, and I'm not putting this down, but you get stuck talking in therapy, and you get stuck in a talking loop, and you're not actually getting to the root cause of what is triggering these feelings in you. And sometimes we have been conditioned so much to shut down those feelings that we don't even know how to really feel the feelings,
yeah.
and we get taught that these emotions are good and bad, like you can't hate anybody. It's like, no, you can. You're allowed to hate. You can love and hate someone at the same time. My goodness, there was times this year when I loved my husband and still hated him for how he was acting, but it's just polarity. It's just one end of a spectrum. And this is, a lot of I had to work on being friends with my anger, because I was so like used to being this like happy person and joyful person. But then wouldn't let myself get angry because, for whatever reason, I felt that I couldn't be angry. So then when it did come, it erupted. Whereas if you just felt the anger in the moment that you were feeling angry, you're like, oh, well, I can let that go now. And I feel this is part of that control as well, and where that anxiety comes from, because it's like I have to show up as this person I think I need to be, and I need to show up, and put my mask on and be whatever image I've presented myself as. And then you can constantly worrying and feeling like fixated on like, oh no, what if they see through that? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Instead of being fully present in the moment. And that circles back to when we're talking about your worth and peace and being at peace, because when you're at peace, you can be fully present, and it allows you to be in the moment. Because when you're in the moment, it's really hard to be anxious because you're not worrying about the outcome. You're not worrying about the future. You're being fully present and you're being there in that moment. There was this clip that showed up on my Instagram a couple of days ago from Kung Fu Panda, the wise old turtle. He's like, why are you worrying about tomorrow? Like, or worry about yesterday? They've already been. The only thing that we know for sure is what's happening right now in the present moment. So this is where learning to practice presence, and why I feel breath work all of a sudden has a big surge. It's because the breath connects you back into your body and allows you to be fully present with who you are. And when you can be present in the moment, that is when you can really listen to yourself and listen to your intuition and build a life that aligns for you, because you're not worrying about the outcome. You're not, you have high standards and you have high values and you have high expectations, but that doesn't mean you're going to control what happens. And sometimes what you think should happen and it doesn't happen, then the magic is that you'll get something even better on the other
Even
side.
better. That's right. And I know sometimes we
Yeah.
get so stuck, I believe, in human doings, just doing this, doing that, that we don't really give our opportunity to be human beings, which is what we are. The whole idea of just being. I love what you said about and staying present. I always say staying present is so important because you cannot change the past, like you said, and you can't predict the future. So why not just focus on being present? In the Bible, it talks about manna for the day, having just enough for today. And there are times, especially in an entrepreneur's life or certain times in midlife, where you want to make you go back to basics and just be grateful for the fact, okay, I have enough to get through today. Because sometimes it is a daily walk. And it's not so much about you preparing, not that you're not aware that the future is coming or hopefully that it's coming, but maybe enjoying where you are right now in this moment in time. Like I'm enjoying having this conversation with you. Catherine, thank you so much for being on the V.I.B.E Living podcast. It's been wonderful having you here today. And all of you, take a look at the show page because I have all of Catherine's links, also information about the different programs that she has. I know you give a retreat, I guess, in your country in V.I.B.E, and you also have one-to-one sessions. And you basically empower women to return home to themselves and to live a life of peace, power, and purpose, just like it as you have. So thank you so much for sharing this time with us today.
Thank you, Linus. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to all of you. I'm so glad that you decided to listen to us. And thank you for helping us to become the top 5% of podcasts in the world. That is so wonderful. So please comment, like, and share this podcast with someone that you love, someone that you know is seeking to find that peace to be able to move forward in their life. And don't forget that with all this work, this self-work that we're doing, listening to these wonderful people like Catherine, it's all about the vibe, learning to be vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.